Okay, well, you guys, we are 5 minutes past the hour, so we're going to go ahead and dive in now. I'm Dacia. I am the host every month, and it's basically my job to ask the hard or the dumb questions and just make sure that I'm tracking with the fabulous Chris Bond and his guest. Today, Tim Carlsson is joining Chris, and we are talking about fix it or ditch it. And I know all of you guys have been in that situation where you are up to here with the quirks and the glitches and I don't know, and the admin fixes and all of the support that you do or do not have in order to make that system. And half the time, especially at the end of the year, you just want to throw the whole darn thing out the window. But is that really the right thing to do? And especially going from 2020 to 2021, we are going to talk really practically about something we're hearing a lot from you guys. So, Chris, where do we start with this conversation? Because you're the one, like we had a long conversation about bringing this to the table or not. So I'm excited.
Well, I am as well. And right now, in terms of 2020, do we fix it or ditch it? That's the question. Oh, let's ditch it. Let's ditch 2020 and get on to 2021. But the reason that this topic really came up and we began putting so much energy behind it was that we were hearing from organizations that their business leaders, their CEO, their chief operating officers, they were coming in and saying, look, we've got to have a completely different level of engagement, of development and measurement for all of our employees. Our business started shifting dramatically in 2020. It's not going to stop in 2020. It's going to keep going on until 2021. And so now we need something different from employees. We need to make these changes. And I started hearing from a number of business leaders asking the question, what investment should I be making in learning and talent management technology? What should I be doing? And what should we be doing different? So when you begin to play that out and you say, well, things are changing dramatically in the business, which means they're going to change dramatically for people. Now we have to have the supporting technology to be able to drive that. And the question is, do we have the right technology? And can that technology support what we're doing? So immediately, I will tell you, as an industry, we all rush out. Well, let's just say it with technology. We want to rush out and get the latest, greatest, the newest thing, right? A new iPhone gets released, new Galaxy, an Android phone whatever your brand of phone comes out, and people are just dying to go get that new technology. And it's no different in the learning and talent industry. Hey, there's something new out there that I really think can help me do something unique and different inside my organization. So let's go look at that. But there's a business evaluation that has to go on. You really have to understand what you're trying to fix or what the reason is for ditching the technology. Because you really do have two choices. You can fix it or you can ditch it. The thing that will be true in 2021 is you can't just leave it alone because the business is changing, people are changing. You've got to begin to adapt to that. So as we are evolving on this topic, and you can tell I'll talk forever on this, Tim and I began talking, saying, man, we ought to do this webinar together. And Tim and I have spoken and presented together, and we have a great time doing it. But between us, gosh, we probably have 60 plus years of experience dealing with all this learning and talent technology and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So I know, Tim, we talk about this all the time. What does it mean to fix it? And what does it really mean to ditch technology? And I think the big part that we talked about, the ditching the technology, that one's one that comes with a price. And we'll start our conversation here, because on ditching the technology, that means you've got a bubble cost of transition. That's not just the bubble cost of I may have an uptick in license cost, or I may have implementation costs. There's a lot of vendors out there trying to make implementation costs really small. But Tim, the biggest area of impact is on the team and the employees and the people that you're working with and the change, right?
Absolutely. There's no question about it, Chris, because when you make a change like that, you're asking folks to change the way that they're used to doing business. And I think it's one of the reasons why it's really important when you start out with a new technology that you're mindful of what the branding and perception and acceptance of it is. Because at that point, you're already creating impressions in the organization about the usefulness of that technology. And 6 years into that conversation, well, you've got quite a reputation at that point, right? But if you start working on that early in the process and focusing on the impact of the technology as opposed to the technology itself, you can make a big difference in your organization, and you give yourself a lot more flexibility in terms of how you change or augment that solution as you move along.
Yeah. Well, let's start out with the ditch it, because I'm going to be honest, that bubble cost,
Yep.
it scares me, and it should scare anybody looking into 2021 from a budget standpoint and when you're going to have that impact. But there are three specific reasons why we think it's acceptable, or it's a good reason to go out and actually ditch your current learning and talent technology. Number one, most prevalent, is organizational frustration. The technology that you have has a bad name inside the org. And if it's got a bad name and that's allowed to develop and to fester, then you're not going to fix that problem. Even if you fix the technology, the change management effort is going to be so costly that you're never really going to solve that problem. And we've seen that a couple of times, right, Tim? Where organizations just allowed the brand of their learning or their talent management system get out of shape.
Yeah, hence the conversation we were having. Yeah, and you have to be aware of that and how it's accepted in the organization, because you can't make the leap that you need to take on the new business functions or support the business and the changing needs of the business without people being distracted by the technology. You know, they always say that if you're talking about the technology, you're missing the point, right? So you want to talk about what it is that you're trying to distribute through the technology, but it's just like in football. You know, if you're talking about the offensive lineman, it's usually because something's gone wrong. And it's the same thing here, right? If you're talking about the technology, it's because something's gone wrong.
Yeah. I'll give you just a quick story. So we've got a client, really good group of people that took over some technology that had been implemented by a different group. It was not implemented properly, and they made no changes. They began to go down this path of trying to figure out whether they could fix the technology. And as they went through that process, what they found was that reputation had been so with the vendor had been just so damaged, they were going to have to move. It was an expensive process for them to be able to move, but it was the right thing to do because they were never going to get the team back on board. And if you don't have that level of engagement to be able to drive people back in to the technology to actually accomplish the things that are important, like scoring touchdowns, if we continue to use that football analogy, then you know you need to go ahead and make that change. The second item on the reason to ditch it is that the current technology really doesn't meet the needs of your evolving business. The current technology is static. It's not being developed. It's not being improved. There's incremental changes. So Tim, one of the things, in order to be able to evaluate how this works, we go through a process of looking at business drivers, learning and talent needs, and then looking at functionality. What's the real priority in making sure that we understand the business drivers first?
Well, the issue there is if you're chasing after features and functionality, you're not addressing the real problems of your business. So we focus on, it allows you to focus on what is really driving the discussion in your organization and what you're trying to accomplish. So if you start at that business driver level, then you've got the ability to drive down into, well, what are we trying to do from a learning and talent management perspective? And then you get down to features and functionalities, right? And one of the things that we see from a features and functionalities standpoint is there's a fair amount of commoditization that occurs in those, right? And you just have to understand how that vendor does something, but there's some similarities. But let me change analogies on you here. Let's talk about cycling. And, you know, when you're cycling and you're in the Tour de France and you're out there, you're going to have folks that are in the initial leaders group, right? That they're way out in front of, they're in the breakaway group, but eventually the peloton catches back up to them, right? But if your technology isn't changing, then you're dropping off the back, right? And the drop, once you fall off the back of the pack, the drop is precipitous and you're gone. And that's really challenging. And we see a lot of that from an organization. When we look at learning and talent management, there's technology, there's the folks that are getting out ahead, but they get brought back in. But if you drop off the back, that's a real challenging situation for your organization. And if you don't have the right technology and it's not solving your business problems, then you can't move forward.
Yep, that's gonna bring me to one of your words for the day that I know you're using is you lose momentum.
Yes.
And once you start losing momentum, how do you begin to catch that back up? Now, and I want to, we'll dive more into momentum when we talk about fixing it. We're going to get to that pretty quick. And then the third and final reason is really need a more comprehensive learning and talent management solution or ecosystem. And we know that some of you are on technologies today. You want to begin to integrate an LXP or a learning record store. You want to do different things and bring in other technologies. And maybe your current technology does not have the ability to integrate and be the hub of an ecosystem. If that's the case, then clearly you need to move, because especially in larger organizations, as you begin to build out and develop that ecosystem, it becomes critical that you've got great integration capability. But in the same way with small to mid-sized businesses, you need easy integration so you can go begin to buy one tool that will be additive to your process and your network as well. So real quick, just to close up on the ditch it side, certainly the number one reason for people moving is organizational frustration. You're not going to change the brand with the current technology. Two, your technology is not growing and evolving and adapting to the needs of your business. And then three, you're looking for a more comprehensive solution. Now, go ahead, Dacia.
It's interesting that, because when I'm thinking about that, I love those 3 points, because basically these are the value cases that they have to bring to the leadership team to say, there is negative impact or positive impact on the business, by keeping it versus ditching it, and each one of those, and, even just sending the message to your organization that we are not investing in you with appropriate technology, if that's what they believe, the direct business impact of that can be really dangerous. And then obviously the other ones in regards to a growing business or a business that needs to evolve. Mm-hmm. Hello, digital transformation. So I think it's great because there's such a practical case to be made in those three areas, because there is financial impact regarding those.
Absolutely, in every single one of the cases. And then that really is a great segue and transition over to what are the three top reasons that people actually want to go fix technology? Now, fixing technology is going to create momentum. You don't have a waiting time to go implement a new learning or a talent management system. You don't have that time that you need to spend to go implement an LXP or a learning record store or content libraries. These are things that can actually change the game for you and change the financial game right away. So number one reason that we see people going out and fixing technology in the learning and talent management space is there's a need for an immediate financial impact in the business. I'm changing the products that I'm selling. I'm updating the way that we're manufacturing and we're working through processes. We have a new series of compliance activities that we've got to commit to. We need more data driven to managers in order to be able to make business decisions. So when we look at that and that immediate financial impact, it's about creating, here comes that word again, Tim, momentum inside the organization that's really showing employees, as you said, Dacia, and showing the business as a whole. We're really, really investing in people, and we're not doing the investment so that it's going to impact 2022. We want to impact 2021. And so those immediate fixes are important. So Tim, what are some areas that you've seen where there's a real financial benefit by going through the process of actually fixing the technology?
Sure, Chris, that's great. As we talk about that, it's a matter of going into your organization and doing some prioritization around where those impacts can be, whether that is from adding a new piece of technology to your bundle, or really just activating some technology that is available to you as part of your suite that you haven't taken advantage of before. I've seen organizations who have spent no time working with competencies in their organizations, and they can, but then there's initiatives that are focused on that, and you can do a quick fix there if you have the data to sit behind that to link your learning to development or to competencies as part of the plan. And that's where I've seen a lot of folks have success, is taking the available technology and just utilizing things that you haven't done before because you implemented 3 years ago and you haven't changed the system since.
Yeah, I think one of the things you're talking about there and being able to make changes so you get more information right away. I mean, we're capturing in these learning and talent systems a tremendous amount of data. And I know we've talked about that on previous webcasts and some of our podcasts, but are we collecting the right type of data and the right type of information that allows us to make a business impact just around evaluation of people? So I think those things are going to be really, really critical to organizations. They're not difficult configuration changes.
Right.
They're things that you can do quickly in order to be able to begin to solve problems. It may be that you want to collect just a little bit different pieces of information. It may be that you're not completely using the functionality of the system in a way that is going to be beneficial to your business, which brings us to point number 2. The technology is not bad. We're just not using it the right way. So how do we begin to make that particular shift? And we've got some great examples of organizations that were going through that fix it or ditch it evaluation, and they made a decision, we're going to go see what happens. Let's give it one more shot to fix it. So Bennett, I'm going to ask you to come back on the screen because I want you to talk a little bit about one of the clients you've worked with, which was a great story of making the decision not to ditch it, but to fix it.
Sure. So yeah, I'm not just the marketing and tech guy here at Bluewater. I actually do have some clients and have a story I love to tell. So a couple years ago, a client that we've been working with for several years came to us and said, "Hey, we're looking and evaluating new technology. We'd love for you to help guide us or help at least make some recommendations on where do we start, what technologies are out there that are really good. We're not thrilled and ready to kind of maybe move on from our current LMS provider. So we took that in and said, okay, well, let's first evaluate kind of where you're at with that technology provider, because they're a reputable system in a reputable place. Let's evaluate a little bit of the current system before we go and make some recommendations on the new on a new system. So we started that process and really came to the realization that they'd been on this platform, which is a robust talent management platform, which was what they were trying to grow into. But at this point, just a learning and performance tool, and realized that after being on this system for about, I think at that point it was about 6 or 7 years, so they'd been pretty established and been on that system several times, that they had not really changed the system at all since the day they implemented it. They're a pretty decentralized organization with a lot of different entities working under the corporate umbrella, and the corporate group owned the system, but all these different groups were doing different things in the system. So there was no consistency, no governance, no real direction of where the system was taking the business as a whole. So we started and said, let's do a full analysis of that. Let's do an optimization review and make a plan of how this system can be fixed and built out better before we go and say, let's just ditch it and move on to a new system. They had their renewal coming up. They were kind of against the wall for a decision. So they said, okay, we trust you. Let's make a decision to at least renew for a year, see how this goes. And jump ahead to the end of the story, they've now renewed for another 3 years on the current system, which is great. But it's a cloud-based system, which I imagine a lot of you are probably on, and so it has a release cycle of typically quarterly or whatever that is. They had not implemented the new functionality basically since they implemented the system. So they were sitting on a cloud system that was 6 years old and not implemented into any of the new features and functionality that are continually evolving in that system. So that optimization process took about a year, which is probably about the same time it would have taken them to implement a new system. However, during that year, we were able to focus on the quick wins first, kind of building that momentum, as Tim said, and Chris said, and really implement some new quick features and functionality in the system that had a direct impact on the system and day-to-day use in the first quarter. And then the remainder of the year, we helped them implement based on our more strategic plan of integrating learning and talent together, starting to use some competencies and helping to drive that development, and then getting data to show that we are actually making an impact and building a governance model that is going to drive the system and the business forward rather than just letting each individual group kind of do things on their own. So it was a very interesting project, and they, at the end of the day, the realization is, wow, we really needed to just fix what we had because it's a great tool, but we were ready to jump ship just because we wanted that new fancy shiny object when you just need to little clean up the dusty old object in your closet, and it works just fine. So
Bennett, what's interesting about that too, when we look at that customer, there's a couple of things that happen. The first is they were enabled to manage their growth in their organization, which had a direct financial impact to them. And the second thing that they were able to do is make a difference in their employee engagement overall, which reduced turnover in the organization and changed the financial perspective there. And then I think the third thing is that just by making the changes in the organization, you have a new set of interest in what's going on. So folks are coming there more often to do the learning and development that you want in the organization, which allows them to do their jobs better. So those are all different things that have financial impacts to the organization that can be measured.
Right. And I'd say just to sum it up, there's three main things that they were lacking in going into this optimization process, or at least were not a huge focus of theirs. It was user engagement across the organization, not just each individual pocket of the organization, but it was looking at it as a whole and saying, how do we support each company differently and better but also the entire organization better from a user experience and user engagement perspective. It was data. How do we actually better report on the changes that we're making, but also just report on in the system in general? How do we help drive employee development and training and really see a picture of that from a dashboard and more automated perspective? And the third one was governance. How do we better manage the system going forward so that we don't get in a situation where everyone's doing something different? There are too many admins that are all stepping on each other. And also, how do we have a consistent group always taking control of the system so that we're on top of releases, change management, and just overall features and functionality of the system. And that really helped them see the vision clearer and help move it forward for success.
Bennett, one of the other interesting pieces there is one of the reasons that the technology and their solution got a little stale for them is because, as you said, they weren't doing anything new. And I think that we have a tendency from a technology perspective to think that just because I'm not having problems, that there isn't stuff that needs to be changed. So back when I first started working on these things 20 years ago or more, whatever, we won't go into that part. There was a real question of whether the technology could actually work properly to deliver the results that you were looking for. So did the registrations work properly? Did the data come back to the system properly? Could you render the right content to the right people? And those things have gotten so much better from the technology works like it's supposed to. That's changed over the last 15 to 20 years. And now we just kind of take it for granted. And if there's a ticket that comes in, it's a data issue. It's not the technology doesn't work like it's supposed to issue. And I think that lulls folks into a sense of complacency to just let the technology do its thing, as opposed to continually trying to innovate it. So we'll just throw that out as an example too.
I think in what y'all are talking about, there's a gold mine of opportunities to go adjust what you're doing with your technology today in order to be able to support the people in your business and to support the leaders inside the business. And Bennett, I was just struck as you were talking about the fact that this organization hadn't taken upgrades, or they had not updated their technology in years. And so as the business is evolving, we know that technology needs to evolve as well. I know we've got another client that several years ago was operating off a piece of technology that was implemented in 2008, and they had not changed or modified the technology at all. And we were making, 10 years later, began the process of making a massive change. One of the things that happens, and this is another value statement of why go try to fix it before you ditch it, is that they had 10 years worth of experience, worth of data, worth of courses and content, worth of pre-built reports that were in that system that would need to be migrated. And this isn't a pitch for the longer you're, maybe it is. The longer you're on the system, the more difficult it is to move, right? It's like the analogy of, gosh, the longer I've been in the house, the more junk I have stacked in the back of my closet. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to move all that stuff out. But it's a process that you have to go through. But you can go clean your closet without moving to a new house. Just because your closet's cluttered doesn't mean, man, I got a cluttered closet. Let me go get a new house with a bigger closet or with a different closet so I can move the same stuff into that closet. Because here's the number one rule for me about fixing technology. Stop trying to do the same thing over and over again that hasn't been working in the first place. And what we find is, and I think Bennett, in your example, one of the number one things was governance. You actually have to set some rules for how people work within the system. Set that governance. That would be point number one, to say you absolutely have to do that first. And I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to let you two guys tell a story. This was a number of years ago, but we were working with a very large company that was having problems with their learning management system. This is one of my favorite all-time stories. They were just confused by why this great piece of technology wasn't working for them. So went in, began to do an evaluation, and over a period of a couple of weeks, came to understand why they were really having the struggles. It was 100% a governance issue and not a technology issue. They had global organization. They had 1,000 administrators. All 1,000 administrators had system admin access to the learning management system. They all had equal access. Everybody was on the same playing field, but that meant that there was content that was being uploaded by the group in Germany that was available to be seen by the people in Australia, and the people in France were able to see the content in Ghana. And it was such a mishmash. People were completing courses. They were out of compliance. They couldn't figure it all. It was fixed by not adjusting the technology. It was fixed by building a governance model and then updating the configuration of security roles in order to be able to provide this global governance and this localized control inside their system. And that was the simple fix. And it had an amazing financial impact on the organization, the business, and they stayed on that technology for a long period of time. But I think we all have stories about governance and looking at that. That'd be pretty, that'd be a pretty interesting thing for us to consider. So I know we put out a poll at the beginning about how long have you been on your technology. Let's show that. So most people 5 to 6 years, less than a year, and then 19% that's over 7 years. Okay, you guys have been on your technology for a long period of time. You're in a perfect place to go fix it, because ditching it would be pretty complex and probably wouldn't get you the immediate benefits. So let's keep talking a little bit about, you've been on there for 5, 6, 7 years, and we would love to have questions come up in chat. But when we look at that, what Tim and Bennett are some other great governance areas that people can go focus on and try to fix that without really having to impact the technology, and then in that they'll recognize great benefits.
Well, I'll take first shot at that, Chris. A couple of things. Organizations change over time. And one of the things that we've seen with a couple of our clients is their configurations were set up for what their business was like 3 or 4 years ago. But they've made 2 or 3 or 10 acquisitions since then, and they want to bring folks into that platform. Great, that works, and the platforms absolutely support it, but you have to make some changes from a governance standpoint in order to handle that. And it's not like people did it wrong in the first place because they didn't know better. It's because they didn't know that the business was going to change the way it did. And so there is no, folks need to just take a look and say, what has changed in my business that's going to cause me to change the way I need to manage the platform? And I think that that's the easiest place to have a start for that conversation. I think the other thing that you run into in related to governance and your overall platform, the second thing that you'll run into is just the amount of content that you have in your site, right? So you started out with X amount of content when you were going through the process, and that's grown over the years, and that stuff grows organically. And if you're not managing the way it comes into the platform, it's going to get out of control, and folks aren't going to be able to know how to get to the content that they need to. And I do know that a lot of the vendors are trying to accommodate for some of that in terms of their AI that allows for you to render content that's similar to what you've been looking at or what other folks have looked at. But quite frankly, you have to have the right information in the system in order to make those to make that AI work the way that you want it to and render what needs to be there. So I think that those are a couple of different areas that you can make a big change from how you run and manage the solution. Bennett, do you have other thoughts there?
Yeah, I think one of the big areas that I had mentioned on our on the story I told earlier is about technology and how that's ever evolving, just like the businesses, like you mentioned, Tim, and really staying on top of just like an iPhone or any phone or TVs or cars even these days. Man, the technology in cars is really catching up to how quickly technology is evolving. But these
Yeah.
systems are on cycles of technology upgrades, of release cycles, and of really evolving their technology to support what they're seeing in their customer base. And sometimes it's frustrating where you may have a very specific need in that system, and they don't put it on their roadmap right away, but they're investing a lot of time and dollars into trying to make sure that their system is supporting as many unique and complex use cases as possible. So staying on top of what that is, where that's coming, what they're focusing on. So if you really notice that they're starting to invest and focus a lot on some of their talent functionality and modules within the system, great time to really focus on how that can impact your business and how maybe your performance processes can integrate better into some new functionality, such as around skills or conversations, or having more frequent check-ins versus just an annual or semi-annual check-in with managers and employees. So I think I wouldn't say technology upgrades should drive your process or change your process, but I think they can really impact in gradual ways what you're doing in the system and how to best leverage the technology as it evolves to help support that evolving side of your business.
And I think I've got two additional areas where we see significant impact in making a change on the fix-it side. And Bennett, you just mentioned process. It's really interesting to go in and to work with organizations that have implemented new technology, and maybe it's 3 or 4 or even 5 or 6 years ago, like most of the people on our call today. When you begin to do that, what we see that's happened is there's a lot of broken processes that are moved from one piece of technology to the next. And the processes are never, ever fixed. And, it's like, we're going to keep on the car analogy. If I had diesel fuel in my gas engine, it's not going to work. And if I go get a new car, but I moved the diesel fuel into the new gas engine, it's still not going to work. There's process changes that you can identify, that you can begin to make inside how the system works in order to be able to really create something that's happening outside the system that makes it easier for the system and the technology to work for the end user. So those process changes are, again, one of those areas where you can begin to make it make incremental changes that are not going to be costly, that are not going to take a lot of time, and you can move through that pretty well. The second is in how you distribute information from your learning and talent technology. I don't want to call it reporting and analytics, but how we extract that data and turn it into information that can help managers, supervisors, executives, anybody in the organization make smarter business decisions. That's another area where we see a tremendous amount of impact inside organizations in order to be able to go in and make the changes. We got the information and data, it's not just a report, but it's how do we represent that informatively so that people can use the data in order to be able to make a change. So I think those are some great places where technology is not bad. It just needs some help. So governance, content curation, technology upgrades, upgrading the process, really looking across the board at how you're doing analytics and reporting and information. And gosh, guys, I'm saying that, and it kind of fits with our Bluewater Center of Excellence, which you can see on our website, which focuses on fixing user experience, content, administration, technology, process, data, and reporting. And if you begin to focus and think about things and break them down into simple segments, then it's going to be pretty easy to be able to make that change and to fix that. Now,
it almost makes me want to like challenge you to say that quickly 3 times in a row.
Who says it?
You just like rattled that off right there.
Let them do it.
user experience, content, admin, technology, process, data, and reporting. I'm not going to do it 3 times though. It's a thing, and we've been focusing on that for years, and it's amazing how consistently somebody can bring a problem or an issue that needs to be solved. We go, yep, that fits right in that category, and we know how to go innovate around that particular solution.
Yeah.
But just looking at our time clock, I want to get to one more thing here that's really important, because there may be a lot of you that are out there that you're looking at technology and you're like, I don't have any money to go buy new technology. I may not even have any money to go fix my current technology. I just got to live with it. And my encouragement to you, don't just live with it. Because one of my favorite things to do is to go help organizations that feel like they don't have money build a business case to actually go find money, to perfect things inside the current operation so that you have money available to go fix something that you don't think that you can fix. So I know Tim and Bennett, we've built business cases for years with people that have seen things that just kind of change their life because we're able to help find the money in order to be able to fix the solution. So Tim, as you think about stories, or Bennett, stories where we've done those business cases, I would love to hear that. My favorite was a long time ago, but we ended up building a business case for an organization. They thought they had no money and ended up getting $80 million funded for a learning project. Now, that was a really big organization, so it sounds impressive, but it was kind of small compared to the big organization. But they thought they had no money, and we found plenty of money in order to be able to go fund a project that is really just right through working through that business case.
Yeah, I think there's, and those business cases, they're not just built on FTEs, okay? That's the first place that people want to go look is, well, if I can eliminate one person, then I can, if I can do that, then I'll have free up this money. And we're really focused on how do we grow the organization to create the funds in order to do that. So it's how do we increase the growth capacity of the organization, or how do we speed the time to competency in the organization so people can be productive sooner? If you can shave off, 3 days out of your onboarding program, the dollars that are available to organizations that bring folks on a yearly basis, the savings are huge, and that funds a lot of work in your organization. Those are 2 key areas that you can take a look at. Chris, Bennett, others from y'all?
I think, there's those business cases are huge in being able to identify, where the money is saved in the way that you can change your process or optimize or kind of fix the technology that you're using. I think a classic example is just in compliance percentages, compliance completions, avoiding compliance penalties in regulated industries, and other penalties that are a consequence of compliance penalties, and downtime, or shutting a manufacturing line down, or not being able to fly a plane because of compliance issues. So I mean, there's things right there that a simple change in process, or maybe a little bit more than a simple, complex change in process, can immediately save millions and millions of dollars for an organization, just because they're able to either track it better, report on it better, or issue or deliver it better for end users to meet deadlines and be able to be compliant 100% of the time.
I think one of the places where okay, DC, I'm going to let you talk because you look like you've got a question.
I do. So it's interesting because one of the things I've been hearing recently is, like several companies have now right-sized or whatever you want to talk about it. So the money conversation is shifting because they're in planning mode. Does that apply to time too? Because that's one of the things I am hearing is people going, I mean, this is great, but I mean, I'm already overwhelmed. So I mean, like, how do you make a case that they do have time to fix technology or to do these strategic initiatives?
Yeah, I think it's going to come to a question of you have to find time now or time later, but at some point in time, you're going to work through that. And I think, there's a little bit of a Bluewater pitch here. That's one of the reasons you find somebody like us to be able to come in and to partner with you to be able to help go get that done. We've seen it and done it, and we can move pretty quickly to be able to help identify those places and help do the work. We understand that people have day jobs. And I know a lot of organizations, there are people inside HR, learning and talent management, through this entire COVID crisis have been working about 125% of the time. And so we're not asking for a lot more work, but I think that if you put a little bit of effort in, it's going to save you time next month and the month after and the month after. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples, which will also roll into the business case. The time to competency. Remember at the beginning when I was talking about the shift in organizations, there's a shift in need of capabilities and skills, and reducing the time to competency to get somebody proficient to be able to deliver a product or service, that's real money in the bank. And I think that it's uber critical. The second one that really applies to, do you have time to go fix your technology now, or your learning and talent program and the development of that, is the cost of, there's two pieces to this, the cost of internal versus external recruiting. It is a lot less expensive to go recruit internally for vacant positions or for net new positions that are being created in the shift and kind of change in the economy. That's one piece. The other one is headcount turnover. People that are leaving because maybe they don't see that your organization is focused on developing for the future, developing them for the future of their career or for their business. And so they're looking at that. And that headcount and turnover, depending on your industry, it could cost you anywhere from $3,500 per person per turnover, all the way up to $15,000. And you begin to go add that up, and the numbers escalate so quickly that the business case becomes simpler. Now, you have to go prove out the logic, and you have to work through that. But I think that there's a lot of that. You begin to look and say, how much extra time are we spending on recruiting externally versus internally? How much more time are we spending training and developing people so that they're going to be competent in the new way that we're going to do business? There's a lot of extra time that's spent there. With a little bit of effort, we believe that you can reduce the time to competency, reduce the time it takes to train people, reduce the number of headcount turnovers, which in the end game is going to save a lot of time, a lot of money for the organization. Let's go drop that into a business case. And now we've got the opportunity to go fix what's broken in order to perfect how we're working together.
Chris, we've been talking for 10 minutes here about business case, and we haven't used those magic words. Is what is the cost of doing nothing? What happens if I do nothing? And that will drive movement in your organization. If we don't change this, X is going to happen. So.
Yeah, the cost of doing nothing is really, really expensive. Maybe not today, maybe not next quarter, but the middle of next year to the end of the year to 2022, cost of doing nothing is going to be really, really expensive. And I think there's a lot of CEOs that are out there that understand that. There's business leaders that are seeing we have to make a change in our investment in people. And now here's your opportunity to go build the right business case in order to be able to get after that and attack that opportunity in a way that I think sets things up really, really well for the future of the people who work for you, people who work for your business, and the organization in general.
Well, gentlemen, we're almost at time. Any final thoughts?
Just diving into this, we've seen it over and over again. You can make a choice to fix it. You can make a choice to ditch it. There are good reasons to ditch it. Organizational frustration, technology's not evolving to align with your business, or you need something that's going to help you build a real learning and talent ecosystem. There's those reasons, but it's expensive. And you just got to be mindful that you may not see the real business value of that change for 2 to 3 years down the road. It's going to take a while to be able to get there. On the other side, and I think our encouragement today has really been around, let's see if there's a way to go fix that technology before you make the decision to ditch it. At least go through the process of evaluation, see and know and understand what are your business drivers, what are your learning, training, and talent needs. Then focus on functionality. And if you do that and you look at the opportunities, let's fix it so we can have an immediate financial impact in a variety of areas of the business. Maybe the learning technology, the talent technology is not bad. It just needs a little bit of loving care and tenderness and, wrap Linus's blanket around the ugly looking Christmas tree, right? And then the final one is, there's always budget money out there somewhere. Let's go find it and let's find a way in order to be able to invest. Because as you invest, your people are going to see a difference. You're going to see a difference. The organization's going to see a difference. It's going to be an incredible opportunity for you to really, really make changes in the business that are going to be positive for everyone.
Well, and I'm going to build on that encouragement as our wrap up here is, you guys, there are so many things that you will learn just by asking, things like matching functionality to business drivers, building business cases, sitting in blind spots that are process changes that you need to make. Sometimes you just can't see, or you haven't seen the alternative to what you're already experiencing. Ask. You believe in growth and investing and learning and in your organization, do it for yourself and for your team. Go down the pathway to find out if this is the right and if support is the right thing for you. So ask the questions, open that door to additional expertise so that you yourself can learn and develop and grow inside of where do you take your learning and talent into the future. So on that note, additional resources, because we're incredibly passionate about making sure that you are supported. If you like these, you're going to love the podcast that we have just recently launched. So it is live on all of the different channels. So it's called The Human Side of Learning and Talent Technology. And it is a lot of behind the scenes stories and best practices. And so if any of these are really resonating with you, make sure to subscribe to that podcast. Send us your ideas on topics. We want to hear your questions. There's going to be guests on from time to time. So definitely make sure that you go hunt that down. And then also, again, tell us what you want to hear. Tell us how we can best serve you. And make sure that you are following these three gentlemen on social media channels, because there is an abundance of thought leadership and practical advice, especially in times that are, I know we're all exhausted by this word, unprecedented, but go get the information, and let's get through this and let's ditch this year together. I'm ready. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And gentlemen, thank you so much for an amazing conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thanks, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.